Welcome to the Vocational Education Podcast. Here's your host, Dr. Dan.
So tell us a bit about you, Peter.
Oh, about me personally or about the organisation?
Oh, a bit of both,
So my name is Peta. I'm the Director of the Australian Apprenticeships and Traineeships Information Service, which is usually referred to as AATS because it's much easier to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So me personally, my background in the vet sector, I started in the sector actually as a research officer at the NCVER. So several years back in Adelaide. And moved over to AATS about 4 years ago now, originally starting off the research program and then moving into the position as the director. So
Fantastic. Well, look, I'm all sorts of excited about that. NCVER to start with. Let's go way back then, because that's I love what NCVER do for our sector. It's our go-to place for all those statistics that we desperately want 1 year after they're done.
Well, yes, it would be nicer if they came out a bit quicker, but at least they're accurate.
Oh, they are indeed. No, it's really good. I'm just going to change our view here so we can both see each other at the same time. That's just for my recording purposes. So yeah, the reason I wanted to catch up, the Vocational Education Podcast has been around for a number of years, but we've had one hell of a hiatus this year. We actually stopped recording, I think, around January, February, and even those January, February ones were just we didn't have interviews planned, etc. So yeah, we've been sitting around going, God, what are we doing? I had to go and concentrate actually on our business, which is the RTO, and that's been going great. And actually, we're, I guess, thriving in a COVID world at the moment because a lot of people are finally taking up training. So that's a good thing. But I'm so glad to be finally talking to people like yourself and finding out more about how the last year has affected everyone and those who you touch from time to time. So tell me about how things have been over the last year.
Well, I mean, it has been an absolutely crazy year, 2020. I think not too many people will be upset to see the back of that in a couple of months' time. I guess for the apprenticeship sector, it has certainly been a really challenging year. Starting off even going back before we'd even heard the word COVID, starting the year with bushfires, which had huge effects on agricultural regions across Australia and on the farmers and a lot of different organisations and businesses, and then going basically straight from there into COVID, seeing a lot of the lockdowns. It's been really negative for apprenticeship numbers, for young people trying to find their first job, their first apprenticeship, and for employers looking to be able to train up staff. So starting to see things looking up a little bit, although, our organisation's based down here in Melbourne. So it's still a bit difficult down here, but certainly across the rest of Australia, things are recovering a little bit better. But I guess from an apprenticeship perspective, because it is so closely tied with the employment market, even though we are looking at training a lot of the time as well, it's very challenging when we see these economic downturns.
So tell me about the statistically, I guess, that seems to be something you're ingrained with there or very familiar with. What sort of downturn did we see maybe? I did see the NCVR statistics, and yeah, sure, apprenticeships were reducing over the last maybe 3 or 4 years. But what happened? What happened back in March and April?
Yeah, so the March quarter statistics have been released. Now, of course, that's for January, February and March. So again, COVID hadn't quite really hit the economy there, but we definitely saw quite a sharp decline in Australian apprenticeship commencement, so across both trade and non-trade areas. The National Australian Apprenticeships Association, who's the peak body for the apprenticeship network providers, has also been tracking numbers informally through their providers, and it really does look like we're going to see a much steeper drop off over the next couple of data releases once NCVR is able to release those. So we're kind of seeing the tip of the iceberg coming through in those official collections. But as you say, it's off the back of a very slow and steady drop off. So even if we're aiming to get back to 2019 numbers That's the lowest it's been this century. So
wow, yeah.
it's not necessarily in the place we need it to be.
So what do you think? Pre-COVID, what do you think some of the reasons for that were, based on your discussions with people?
Look, we've certainly seen just in the last couple of weeks since the government's announced further funding and activity in the sector, we've seen a huge amount of activity and interest in apprenticeships. And I think there really has, up until now, been really a lack of marketing and promotion of the Australian apprenticeship system and the benefits there, without having kind of large marketing campaigns, without having big pushes in the sector. Things have been dropping off slowly. But I think it is also a reflection of the fact employers are finding it so difficult to find the apprentices that they need, with so many young people in particular moving towards the university sector, and a bit of a perception that apprenticeships are for someone who maybe isn't so academically inclined, or for someone who doesn't want to do that study. A lot of the time, actually, employers do need someone who have good maths, good school results, who are dedicated to doing the training. So for an employer, it can be quite difficult finding an apprentice, and with a lot of people not really interested in the sector, it's just been that slow, steady decline in employers wanting to invest and people wanting to move into it.
So we saw a decline, I guess, around, and we'll get to the incline soon, don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom.
Yes.
But we saw a decline there, but also in the university sector. I know that a lot of that was based on international students. Of course, that all just disappeared. But even without that, there was a decline in university numbers as well. So if they're not going to university, not doing trades, what do you think's happening?
I'm really not sure, actually. It is difficult. We do hear a lot about the university sector taking a lot more students, but as you say, there is a drop off there as well, and with places being capped again, I do wonder if there's people moving into non-accredited training or moving straight into employment outside of an apprenticeship arrangement as well. But I'd love to see some really good research comparing the different pathways.
Yeah, well, me too. Absolutely. And I think also we're going to see some changes, and this is the positive now, some changes to the apprenticeship sector now that there looks like there's going to be an increase in fees for even the humanities degrees and stuff through university now going into 2021. So that might be just enough of a turn off to those people who thought, oh, no, I need a new university education to get employed. Now they maybe starting to think about apprenticeships again, because at least with apprenticeships they get paid from day one. It might not be much, but it's you get paid to gain that skill. I know that didn't sound like a question, but it was kind of a question.
Look, I think the combination of I think that the combination of the increased university fees in a lot of different areas, coupled with the increased activity around things like the boosting apprenticeship commencements wage subsidy, employers have started thinking about taking on apprentices again, and in a much wider range of sectors, because these incentives are no longer tied to specific industries or specific occupations. Employers are able to actually look at the system and say, is this something that I can participate in and take someone on in? And as you say, an Australian apprentice gets paid from day one, so there's a huge positive in that. It's not an astronomical amount. The wages definitely increase post apprenticeship, but you are getting paid, and you know that there are jobs there because you're in one. So it's not like going to university or potentially doing other vocational education where you're not sure about what the employment outcomes are at the end of it. This is something where there's an employment outcome because you're in it.
Now, sorry, we are having a little bit of a delay, which I haven't experienced before on Zoom. So my apologies if I ask you a question and then I don't hear a response and go, why aren't you answering me? That's just technology for you. But anyway, that's what happens. Yeah, I know. It's like we're on satellite across the world or something. But anyway. So yeah, the apprenticeship sector does really interest me. Do you also look into traineeships as well? Is that a part of your remit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are around Australian apprenticeships, so apprenticeships and traineeships, but under a formal contract of training. So a lot of time employers and people in the industry use the term trainee or traineeship for a non-contract of training kind of arrangement, which is fine, but we deal with the contractor training side.
Okay, and the subsidy at the moment, please correct me, I'm not 100% across this, but the subsidy at the moment, wage subsidies, is it $200 a week or something like that for taking on a new apprentice? Is that correct?
So the $200 a week is actually not for apprenticeships. That's for young employees.
Oh, right.
So the current wage subsidy is up to $7,000 per quarter, or half of the wage of an Australian apprentice
Right.
for 1 year.
Okay, and does that apply to traineeships as well, or is there still that?
Absolutely.
Okay, it does. Oh,
yeah,
that's good to
anything
hear.
under a contract of training. So if you're eligible to be signed up into a contract of training, and so that can, there's no age limit on that as well, unlike
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And it can also apply to existing workers. So if you're an employer who really needs to upskill or retrain one of your staff, and you haven't been able to invest in that, you can actually apply for this wage subsidy to be able to upskill them.
Fantastic. So does that also apply?
So there are quite a lot of industries that may be a benefit.
Okay, so a lot of, I do understand that the BSB training package has always been a good one for traineeships, people getting that first step into business and learning about how to work in an office and that sort of thing. Now, the caveat on that back in the day when I was involved in it was that there was a cap, and the person couldn't have completed, I think, a Cert 3 or above in the past. Is that still the case? Or because I like the fact that you said older Australians for the apprenticeships, but does that sort of transfer to traineeships as well?
It will. So it's going to depend on what the qualification is. So the eligibility requirements there are actually around being able to be signed up into a contractor training. So if you are eligible for the contract, you can get the subsidy. But there will be cases where people have an equivalent or an equivalent higher qualification that won't be able to get signed up.
Okay.
Into the contract, and therefore won't be able to get the subsidy.
Yeah. I have found like our company hires experienced people. Up until next month, I will be the youngest person in my company. I mean, I'm 49.
Excellent.
Pardon me. So it's everyone's over 50, and they bring into our company a world of experience, and we love it. We absolutely love the fact. But they've all got qualifications from the last 20, 30 years of work. So none of them none of them can get any sort of subsidy with regards to additional training. And I would love to put them through like diplomas of leadership and management and things like this, or even Cert 4s to just increase their skills now. So is there anything piloting for that, or is there anything coming up that the traineeships might apply to?
Look, it's so difficult to talk about individual eligibility. I'd recommend talking to an apprenticeship network provider around that. Unfortunately, we're not quite across every specific aspect of eligibility. So.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I was just trying to get it out of you while I had you.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Not one of those I can give a definitive answer on.
No, that's fine. So tell me about your interest. I like the fact that you're involved in research. I'm an absolute research nut myself, and can never learn enough. And I'm always online, and I'm always on all the university portals to try and learn more. So tell me about your personal journey with regards to what you like to learn about, and have you made use of this time? And I obviously moving into a director's role is very time consuming, but what have you made use of this last few months, particularly for yourself, for your own personal learning?
Yeah, so I've actually started delving back into the realm of data analytics and statistics. So back when I started in research, I have a PhD in psychology, so very much in that behavioural area, which is definitely my interest. But we do a lot of data analytics and statistical analysis, which was something I really enjoyed back when I was working in that area. And slowly I've kind of been moving away from that side of things. So I've been delving back in. We've been collecting data on a few of our different resources to try and, use a database method to improve our usability and some of those things. And we've got a couple of research projects going on. So been going back in and relearning and using some new software and those kinds of things. It's been a good few months actually being able to re-engage with some of those elements.
Yeah, I know we're probably going to alienate 90% of our audience right now, but I love statistics. I really do. I, I remember, God, I'm going to say 2001. 2001, it was one of my subjects in the MBA, and the textbook, I'll never forget it. It was one of those textbooks that smelled like spew. Do you know those ones, the ones that have that horrible,
Yes.
yeah, that. And I'll never forget that. That's, you know, how memory, well, you would know, being a psychology advocate, you'd know how smell enhances memory, and that's one of those ones that always comes back. But I remember that book and falling in love with what you could do with statistics, and how you know how you could even sit down with a decent bit of software and start to figure out tables and get statistics working for you, and seeing how impressive they are to then back up a decision that you need to make in your business or recommend to your business. Back then I was employed by another organization, and I delved in deep and said, look, we can do this. Oh, how can we do this? Because of this statistic. And how'd you get that? Oh, doing this, you know, and I loved it. It's actually, yeah, one of my favorite subjects. And here's something funny for you. I know this is an interview of you, not me, but interestingly, I remember during that MBA, like I'm a trainer. No, like that's my passion is in education, full stop. But I got into some of the advanced skills in training, and I pull those apart now in workshops, and have an absolute ball doing that. And I've been doing it for 15 years. But the subject I got the lowest mark in during my MBA was professional presentations.
Oh no.
So there you go. If anybody listening, it doesn't matter where you start, it's where you end. So where are your goals? Always think about your goals.
Definitely.
So statistics aside, and I'm glad you found time to sort of delve into the new software, especially, and how to get those analytics working for your organization.
Right.
What can you see happening? And I won't say post-COVID, because you don't know when that's going to be, but let's say into 2021, where do you think things are going to go with apprenticeships? Where do you think things are going to go with the statistics actually we use around some of the big decisions that government makes? So 2 questions.
Yeah. Well, they are 2 big questions as well.
I know. We got time.
I think apprenticeships are definitely going to continue recovering. You know, now that Victoria very much has an end to lockdown in sight. In fact, hospitality and retail reopening tomorrow. So we'd expect to see some really good activity in those kinds of sectors. But really across the country, you know, the economy is starting to rebuild. There is a focus on reskilling and upskilling, and we're certainly, you know, keen to keep watching the government and see how much investment or different programs or initiatives might come through there. And the state governments are being really proactive at the moment as well. I think COVID's really enabled a lot of organisations to rethink what they're doing in this space and how they're training and what they're focusing on. So we do certainly hope to see you know, some changes, I guess, in the areas that people might be looking at. Something we're keeping a really close eye on, or 2 areas actually, are around sustainability and environmental sustainability, and some increases in activity in those particular areas. So with wind farming, with hydro energy, carbon reclaiming, and a lot of those kinds of activities. And then also the digital side of things. You know, COVID has forced everyone online, but I don't necessarily think we've come to grips with some of the issues around cybersecurity and those kinds of areas. And, you know, IT is just going to be going off the charts. So certainly seeing some new innovations in those areas will be fantastic. In terms of, sorry?
No, so no, yeah, answer the rest of the question. Apologies. Yeah,
So,
didn't mean to break in. Yeah.
No, in terms of data, I think what we've really seen through COVID is the government's relying on much quicker data. They need data right now to be able to make decisions. And even, you know, in Melbourne, we were seeing yesterday, we had a 3-something o'clock press conference from the Premier because they were waiting on data. And that's a very, you know, clear example. But even in the apprenticeship space and the vet space, the governments have been relying on much quicker data than what we're used to seeing in the sector. Of course, they still do need that really deep, accurate data from NCVR, but they are also using quicker, I guess in some ways dirtier data, but to really inform quick decisions, and then to use the really clean, good quality data to reanalyze those and back them up at a later date. So I would suspect that we're going to keep seeing changes in that kind of area. The government in the budget did announce a new software package for the apprenticeship network providers to use, and that may have the potential to increase the speed of turnaround in data and some of those kinds of things as well. So I'd say that from an outsider looking in, that governments are really concerned about these, the ease of access and the speed of access of data to be able to inform decision making and to evaluate programs and those kinds of things as well. Let's put my data hat back on there.
I like that. Yeah, I think even from a national perspective and an international perspective, because we see this in all the other countries in the world, that many decisions were made in the first few months of this year based on not zero data, but very limited data from very limited sources. And we saw that evolve over time, especially in the health sector, about what was and wasn't required. And then also from the community sector is how we should be responding to it. And I would like to think that I agree with you. I'd like to think that if governments and people in decision-making positions got more accurate data quickly, then a lot of what we've seen occur, especially in other countries, we're pretty lucky, but also good here with the way we've dealt with it. But other countries definitely, some of those decisions wouldn't have been backed off on, or they would have been made more clearly and explained more clearly. Because I think that's the other thing with data, is that it's a bit like a science journalist. A science journalist is there to try and take scientific information and make it consumable by people who have interest in it, but aren't necessarily scientific. And I think the same goes for social policy. If something's happening, if there's a pandemic and we need to get apprentices employed, but it's taking 6 months or 3 months for information to seep through for a decision to be made, the public tend to think that the government's not working fast enough. Yeah. And that's just not the case. And the health sector's really been one that I bet they're just scratching at every surface, trying to find better ways to get data more quickly. And I've never seen so many research papers written on COVID or anything, let alone COVID, in the last 6 months. Just everyone's doing research to try and say, this is what happens then, this is what happens now. So I can see that working. I just to touch on a couple of things you raised then. You mentioned wind farms, sustainability, renewable energy, that sort of thing, as a way forward for apprentices next year and beyond. What sort of trades are involved with them? Excuse my ignorance here, but what sort of trades, or are they brand new?
Look, there's a huge combination of new areas, but also a lot of I shouldn't say old trades, but trades that we're very familiar with that are being applied to these kinds of things. So, electricians, general electricians are, absolutely necessary across, anything to do with energy, I guess, high voltage and those kinds of things. So you'll see a lot of people needing electrical licenses, and then also areas like plumbing. So again, at more traditional trades, there are a lot of organisations doing work around green plumbing, green electricity, solar panel installation, a lot of those kinds of areas. And what we're seeing now as well is more units of competency that are coming in that can be pulled into those qualifications. So we're seeing some core units around sustainability, but we're also seeing that flexibility in employers, I guess, and apprentices being able to go and choose those units that might be more specific for that kind of more sustainable application as well. And it isn't necessarily the case that you're going to be going and doing a specific sustainability electrician qualification. You're going to become an electrician, and you're going to be using those skills applied in these different kinds of environments. So, and another big one is engineering tradespeople as well. There's a huge skills shortage in things like welding and boiler making, but right across engineering tradespeople, because they're needed to make the parts for wind farms, for all of these kinds of big projects that are coming in. So there's again those kind of traditional skills, or those known skills that are being applied in this way. But then I think we will also see some more custom qualifications coming in the future as well, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that all goes. I love that old saying, and I say old saying now because I don't know who said it, but about the jobs that exist. Sorry, people going through school now, the jobs that they'll be taking don't even exist yet. And I guess that would be the same with some of the trades. Not so much a job won't exist, but the way the trade is taught, and maybe the electives they choose will definitely change over the next few years. But I see where that's linked inextricably from government policy. Like if the South Australian government, for instance, fantastic at their renewable energy policy. They've had some backward steps there, but they definitely want to go forward with it.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine in a state like South Australia, that would be a first step. If you're becoming an electrician, you make sure you know how wind farms work. You make sure you know how that massive solar farm works. There could be jobs for you there, or there could be ways ahead. Is there a place for apprentices once they finish their apprenticeship to do like the equivalent of postgraduate qualifications to then upskill in these other areas?
Yeah, so we're seeing a couple of different things here. And I should just say, picking up on South Australia, I believe that they had a world first in the entire state was powered by renewable energies for over an hour last week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the vast majority of energy in that day was renewable. So they've kind of crossed that barrier now. And hopefully it's a lot more stable, but they look like they may be able to push energy or electricity out to the other states now rather than having to bring it in, which is fabulous. But we're also seeing things. So the South Australian government this week has also announced a new dual trade pathway for refrigeration electrical technicians. So dual trades is a method for people to be able to pick up multiple skills at once. So being able to combine two different trades, and that is becoming more prevalent in some areas, although not others. But certainly we do not see a traditional trade apprenticeship as the end of a learning pathway. There are increasing numbers of skill sets that someone with these qualifications can go on to do, and higher level qualifications, either through the VET or through the university systems. So our diploma and advanced diploma level qualifications absolutely are huge in some of those trade areas, and then also being able to pathway into university if those people need or wish to have further education as well at a higher level.
I guess when they get to that engineering level, that's when the universities can step in and say, okay, well, you need this now. But I like the fact that the vet sector has, and whether it's through public or private training organisations, they've really done well to provide for that. And again, led by government investment, so that's nice to see. Do you see the other states listening to what's going on in South Australia?
I think we're not seeing a huge amount necessarily through the governments at the moment, although we may see that changing. But there does seem to be a lot more private investment and activity through the private sector. So I think it's not so much necessarily governments driving this process, although there will be differences across Australia with that, but really private organisations seeing renewable energies and environmental sustainability as more important to how they act and to their business models as well.
The one thing I'm hoping that, and being from, or not from Queensland, but I live in Queensland now. I was born in WA, so I guess they've got very similar traditional hooks into the mining sector, which I've got nothing against. We do need to dig stuff out to build stuff, so that it's a sector that needs to exist. But there is a prevalence, I guess, in some of the decision making to appease these very high employment sectors. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years how that goes. Because I love the idea, at least, or the concept of being more sustainable. And it's nice to hear that you said that the private sector is stepping in there, because I think maybe if government doesn't, at least the private sector can say that it's viable, and they can show that it's viable, and then the government might come along afterwards and say, okay, well, we can see that there are jobs here, and we can keep them in Australia, and we can do this and we can do that. So yeah, hopefully that's the way it's going to go. With other than, I guess, in the apprenticeship sector and traineeship sector, I know that's your main goal here to boost that, I suppose. But within vocational education in general, what sort of things have you seen that are working well, I guess, in the last 6 months? What sort of things have you been made aware of?
Oh, gosh, there are so many small projects that are going on as well as some of the larger things. I think the sector has really shown how responsive it can be throughout COVID, in being able to train remotely, being able to engage with its students, and how it works with employers and industry in that way as well. So I think that's been really positive a lot of the time. Um, I'm trying to think of like a really concrete example for you, but there are so many small stories, particularly the smaller RTOs, who are extremely responsive to employer needs, who are able to, although I guess I'm going back to the apprenticeship space here again, are able to support the employers of their apprentices in making sure that everyone has been able to transition through COVID, that they're able to, support when an apprentice or trainee hasn't been able to keep up their employment side, being able to do further off the job training with the training provider.
I have heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, even earlier this year, in New South Wales, we saw some changes around apprentices being able to really do further study with their training provider when the bushfires had affected their businesses. So, and that was the government coming in there as well and supporting that. So I think we have seen a lot of responsiveness. We're really excited with the job trainer package going ahead, funded by the governments across Australia, and the ability that that's going to give people to upskill, retrain, start their training pathway, and there has certainly been a lot of work behind that. I'm not aware of all of it, but we've heard a bit of it from the government into choosing what kinds of qualifications and occupation pathways are in there, and we're hopeful that that will be something that can bring people into the vet sector and allow them to start that journey as well.
So just to bring us to a bit of a close, I'd like to, I guess, allow you to tell me or tell our listeners how and why they would want to get in contact with your organisation, what sort of benefits they can gain from doing that, and of course your website and how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So at AATS, we are funded by the federal government to provide accurate, timely and informative information for users right across the spectrum. So if you are working in the apprenticeships industry, so an RTO, working in an apprenticeship network provider, or if you're someone interested in getting into an apprenticeship or a traineeship or employing an apprentice or trainee, we're able to talk through your options. We're able to work with you to understand the system and what it might provide for you. So our main resource is the Australian Apprenticeships Pathways website, aapathways.com.au.
Pathways, I like that. That's
AA
good.
Pathways, yeah.
AA Pathways. Oh, okay, yep.
Double A, yeah. And we've got a huge range of information and resources on that website to support the information needs of people, and they can give us a call as well. Our contact details are all on the website, so if someone's a bit confused about what their options are, they can give us a call.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I put the link in the description of the podcast so people can follow it nice and easily. And look, thank you so much for your time today, Peta. It's been wonderful talking to you, and it's nice to have a fellow statistics buff.
It's fabulous. There aren't too many of us around, although.
No, I usually go in the corner and hide with shame when people start asking me about that sort of thing. But no, I do love it. Between that and actually psychology as well, whilst I'm not a psychologist by any means, learning and psychology go hand in hand, and I'm an education buff. Absolutely. So it's absolutely, I love that topic. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much for spending some time with us here at the Vocational Education Podcast. And once we've uploaded it, we'll let you know the link, and feel free to share.
Beautiful. Thank you for having me on today.
Pleasure. All the best, Peta.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye for now.